In this video, we are talking about 7 players that you need to add immediately in fantasy football after week 8, plus 5 players that you must stash now to get ahead of your league mates. But before we get into it, if you can please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you do end up enjoying. Starting with my number 1 ad of the week, it's Cedric Tillman, who was on our waiver wire video last week. So hopefully you already got him on your team for cheap, and maybe you even started him in week 8 because he went off. 7 catches, 99 yards, 2 touchdowns, 28.9 fantasy points. It's really back-to-back strong performances for the really talented second-year receiver. And with Jameis Winston now as the QB1, I think Tillman could potentially be a league winner going forward. Yes, this matchup against Baltimore was fairly easy. We know the Ravens are a pass funnel. They're not really good at stopping the pass. And then on top of that, they had some injuries to their secondary. So it was very favorable for Tillman, and then they were playing from behind. So that all kind of worked to his advantage. But the quarterback upgrade is massive from Winston to Watson, as Deshaun Watson averaged 170 passing yards in 6 games before getting injured. And in Winston's first start, he had 334 yards through the air. So that's huge news for all the pass catchers on this offense, whether it's Tillman, Njoku. I think it's also good news for Nick Chubb as well, because this offense as a whole is going to be much better. The environment, the ecosystem will be improved, which means Nick Chubb is going to have more opportunities to score a touchdown. So I do like Tillman going forward for the rest of the year. If you need a wide receiver, I would be aggressive getting him on your team. At number 2, Jauan Jennings absolutely needs to be mentioned here. No, he's not like 15% rostered or anything like that. He's probably on a lot of teams, but I did see him also get dropped in a lot of leagues because a lot of people spent their fab on him before week 8, and then he didn't play due to that hip groin injury. And now the 49ers are on bye in week 9. So Jennings could very well be on your waiver wire. And there's already reports coming out that he's probably going to be good to go for week 10. So he needs to be added. If he's available in your league, he is my number 1 ad by a mile and will have a substantial role in week 10 because Brandon Ayuk out for the year, as we know, with that torn ACL. Debo always seems to be hurt. I love Samuel as a player, but just seems like every single week he has a different injury. Ricky Pearsall also needs to be added if he is out there on waiver wires, but I think Jennings, very underrated receiver on a good offense with a good quarterback, with a nice play caller. This is still a massive opportunity for Jennings, even with Pearsall now in the lineup, even with CMC likely returning in week 10. I still want Jennings on my team if he's out there. Heading into week 8, Jennings was 3rd in yards per route run and 4th in PPR points per route run, behind only Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson, and Chris Godwin. We know those are some incredible receivers, so that's good company there. The San Francisco offense as a whole will also get a boost, as I mentioned, with Christian McCaffrey set to return. I think Jennings, very talented receiver in a really good situation. He's clearly the 49ers' best wide receiver outside of Debo, so make sure Jennings is not on your waiver wire, because if he is a must-add. At number 3, Jaylen McMillan had a massive opportunity in front of him heading into week 8, but did not deliver whatsoever. 4 catches, 35 yards on 7 targets, 9.2 fantasy points. I will say it could have been a much bigger day. He was open down the middle. It was blown coverage. Baker kind of threw it behind him, but McMillan kind of wasn't looking for the football either. So if they would have hooked up on that, that would have been a 50-plus yard touchdown. Would have been a completely different narrative for McMillan. But Jaylen still led all Bucs receivers in routes run with the 90% route participation. So the door is still wide open, I think, for Jaylen to emerge among these Bucs wide receivers who didn't really do much of anything. So I like McMillan. I like this offense. I like Baker Mayfield, who continues to impress. And in week 8, as we know, it was a Cade Otton show. 9 catches, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns on National Tight Ends Day. That's not going to happen every single week. McMillan is going to be involved. I think his role grows. And while this performance was discouraging, I would still be adding McMillan if he is out there, just because of what I mentioned, on a good offense with a good quarterback. I like his upside the rest of the season. Don't go crazy with your fab, but yes, Mike Evans will return hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And I do think that Jaylen has nice upside potential even once Evans returns. So if you're in desperate need of a receiver, get him on your roster. At number 4, Keon Coleman. You can't write this guy off at this point anymore. He's put together 2 really strong weeks in a row. 5 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown last week, 18 fantasy points. And over Coleman's last 2 weeks, he's accumulated 14 targets, 9 receptions, 195 receiving yards, a touchdown. He was second in route participation in week 8 behind only Khalil Shakir. It's kind of interesting to me. Like, the addition of Mari Cooper has elevated Coleman, which typically you'd assume it'd be a bad thing, but it's taken away the defensive attention from Keon, put it on Amari, and it's left Coleman in some nice positions. I will say I don't know if this will continue, because as Amari gets established into this offense, builds a nicer rapport with Josh Allen, I just don't see a world where Cooper is just, 1-2 catch guy a week. Like, he massively disappointed this week. After a really strong debut for the Bills, while Amari's route participation did increase, he didn't do anything in the box score. Super weird. Don't think that continues. So while I do like Keon, I like betting on talented wide receivers, especially rookies the second half of the year in a good environment with a superstar quarterback. These are all good things. I do think that Shakir, Cooper are going to dominate a lot of this passing game, but as of right now, Keon is hot. He needs to be added. He's playing really well, and he has some nice juicy matchups ahead against the Colts and Rams. So add the rookie receiver and just hope that he continues to play at this level, because if he does, he could be a major steal. At number 5, Josh Downs. It's been a really weird year for Downs. He suffered that injury in training camp, missed the beginning part of the season. Then he returned with Joe Flacco and was setting the league on fire. Then he had a couple down games. And now he's coming off a pretty nice performance with Anthony Richardson under center. 4 catches, 109 yards, touchdown, 22.2 fantasy points. Almost had a second touchdown, but fell just short. Was down, I believe, at the 1-yard line. Downs has been really good since returning from injury and has scored the 11th most fantasy points among receivers since week 3. Yes, Josh had that nice game with Richardson as QB1, but I think we would all still prefer Joe Flacco. And it appears the Colts, I don't know what they're going to do. After Richardson subbed himself out of the game because he was too tired, what are we doing here? Like, how can you be too tired? You're a professional athlete. Makes no sense. That is a huge red flag. Obviously, the Colts head coach Steichen didn't like it, as well as upper management. Like, no one. Colts fans, terrible look. Really bad. On top of that, outside of a couple nice throws from Richardson, he's looked very bad this year. I don't think that they turn to Joe Flacco, but if the Colts say, hey, we're going to let the young quarterback learn from the veteran and put Flacco in, again, it's very unlikely. I would be shocked if they did it, but if they do, Downs would turn into an instant league winner, because we saw how good he was with Flacco. Like, Downs is a heck of a receiver. He just needs a competent quarterback, which is what Joe Flacco is. Anthony Richardson is going to have big moments, but he's way too inconsistent. He's way too inaccurate to make Downs anything more than a boom-bust wide receiver 3. We saw a nice game. If Richardson is under center next week, it wouldn't shock me if Downs has 5 fantasy points. So if Joe Flacco takes over again as quarterback 1, I really like Downs. Outside of that, I wouldn't be too excited about him moving forward, but needs to be added just in case Flacco does take over. At number 6, Kimani Vidal. I'm going to keep talking about him. I will continue to keep bringing him up on every waiver wire video, because we know this. This is the time of the year where you want to stash as many running backs as humanly possible on your bench, on your roster, that could be league winners if the starter were to ever get hurt. And I'm not predicting, I'm not hoping for a J.K. Dobbins injury, but we know his history. It's extensive. He gets hurt all the time. He's injury prone at this point, and Dobbins hasn't looked that great overall. His yards per carry have been poor. Yes, he got into the end zone last week, but what are the Chargers doing? Give Kimani more opportunities. I think he's the better running back at this point. He's a really talented back, ran for over 1,600 yards last year, which was second in all of college football, along with finishing second in broken tackles with 94. He's an athletic back, exceptional burst, 3-down skill set. He's like a bowling ball. He has nice agility, speed. He's 5'8", 213 pounds. He reminds me a little bit of a Maurice Jones-Drew type of player that is just really sneaky athletic. And he's on a Chargers team that we know wants to run the football, even though they have been more pass heavy over the last couple of weeks, which we like if we're a Herbert or McConkey owner. But regardless, again, this is all about if Dobbins were to go down, Vidal would be a league winner. He would be an RB1 the rest of the way. So these are guys that I want on my bench if I can afford to stash them, because the upside is just, it's too good. It's league winning. So I would be adding the explosive rookie now if you can. I think he's one of the best stashes at the position in all of fantasy football. At number 7, Jaylen Coker had his best game as a pro in week 8. Who would have thought, with Bryce Young under center, reeling in 4 catches, 78 yards, touchdown. Yes, he was in garbage time, but hey, still counts for fantasy on 6 targets, 17.8 fantasy points. This is a speculative ad under the assumption that Deontay Johnson gets traded. I think that's going to happen at this point. You've heard the rumors. You've heard Adam Schefter say that it's a very strong possibility. And if that were to happen, like Yella gets there, Thielen eventually comes back from injury, but give me Coker, who has shown a lot of promise this year. He's looking like one of the better Panthers wide receivers at this point. He was second in routes run in week 8 at 80%, only behind David Moore, so he ran more routes than Leggett. That's notable. And I think he gets a nice upgrade if Andy Dalton is the quarterback one again. I don't mind Bryce Young. Obviously, he got it done with Young. So either way, this is probably a deeper ad, but we see guys all the time. The second half of the year come out of nowhere. Coker could be that guy, as he's received an 80.1 PFF receiving grade, which ranks first among all Carolina receivers. And the Panthers have the 3rd best schedule for receivers in the fantasy playoffs. So this is forward thinking. This is more of a bold ad. Like, he had a nice game, but he's still on the Panthers. If DJ does get traded, you have to think that Coker sees an even larger role on a team that needs to throw a lot because they have a terrible defense. So why not add him just in case he goes off the second half of the year? You're going to be happy that you did. You can get him probably for really cheap right now. And I just think he's one of those guys, talent, opportunity that could break out the second half of the year. And you want guys like that on your roster. Moving on to some honorable mentions. Ricky Pearsall obviously needs to be added. Parker Washington for the Jaguars with Brian Thomas Jr. might miss a couple of weeks. Christian Kirk out for the year. Christian Watson for the Packers. Jerry Jeudy. Throw Elijah Moore into the mix. And Xavier Hutchinson, because we don't know what is going to happen with Stephon Diggs. He would be the next guy up behind Tank Dell if Diggs misses significant time. And then onto the stashes. All of my stashes, all of your stashes, all of anyone's stashes should be running backs. Blake Corum is my number 1 stash if you can't get Vidal. Jaylen Warren, I'm taping this before Monday Night Football, but Jaylen Warren should be on benches right now. Braylon Allen, Keaton Mitchell, Trey Benson, Tyrone Tracy Jr., Zach Charbonnet, Tyler Algier. Same thing that we just talked about with Vidal. These are all guys that if the starting running back goes down, they have league-winning upside. They have top 12, top 15 upside at the position. This is the time of year where you get these guys, tuck them away on your bench, and they could help out your team tremendously down the stretch. That's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. If you took away anything from the video, if you could please like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out more than you know, and I will see you in the next one.